don't have that minimal skill. And if we want to talk about surviving a reset, then one of the most basic skills you can learn is base ingredients to create a meal from scratch. If you cannot do that most simplest of thing, I don't think you're going to make it. And that's not in like a condescending way. It's just a simple fact. If you cannot cook foods from scratch like Little House on the Prairie, you will not make it through this transition, period. If you're going to rely on fast food, home deliveries, you're just simply, that is going to stop one day. And this is such the biggest, giant firework in the air. Ba-boom. Take a listen, take a look. This is the beginning of the closure of fast food restaurants. So you as a consumer and me as a consumer, where are we going to go? I mean, I wouldn't say a huge amount of my own food, but I grow a nice percentage. Like we had the spinach, we had the tomatoes. What else? We got the squash. We got the basils. We got the mints. What else do we have? The moringa oleifera. We got the different kind of peppers. We got different kinds of mints and basils growing. We got 4 or 5 different types of lettuces going on. We got some cabbages. Got the Brussels sprouts. I know they're super tiny right now and haven't really gotten that much bigger. And the rosellas and all these different the raspberries are kind of finished now. We had a heap of fruit on the trees. We had the peaches and the apples. Pears are still strong. All right, so we got some things that we can trade with other people. We got the eggs. We got the chicken eggs. We got the duck eggs. All these kind of things. But the Amish farm's right next door to us, so we get a lot of extra produce. Like we went and got these different kind of beans that we had run through our bean supply because, well, we didn't plant enough runner beans this year. We did some bush beans, and they didn't grow as well as we thought they would on the fence line. But you can see where I'm going with that. I'm trying to grow enough food here on my place and supplement in for the lettuces at least, something that can produce on my own farm. But just based on this $5 value war right now, they're looking at more than 1,000 locations to be closed, and their profit margins have dipped 8.7%. That's insane. 8.7%. And the Subway stores, even from in recent weeks, 10% plunge. There's no way these stores can stay in business with the lack of traffic and all these other majors throwing a $5 meal out there. Hence, you're going to need to start buying, like I say, watch episodes of the Little House on the Prairie. If you can see what's in their sundry shop, what's the dry goods that were in any like frontier store. This is the way you are going to need to start to think again. What could you take in there and then turn a meal into? We have a whole cow. We got a 900-pound steer and had it butchered for us. Filled up a couple freezers. Okay, we got meat. We got part of a lamb left. We got some pork. Got some chicken. We got fish. Okay, so we got some protein in our freezers. So for me, if you give me a bag of flour, I could make something out of that. If you give me a bag of cornmeal, I can make you something. Give me some eggs, give me some cornmeal, give me some eggs, give me some flour, and you're going to get some bread out of that. I got the yeast. It's all these little things. Like you need the yeast, you need the flour, you need the water, and mix it correctly. Hold on, wait for a day, flip it over, do your kneading, and then you got some bread. Like if you're going to spend $6 or $8 on a loaf of bread, you're not going to make it. You're simply not going to make it. You need to learn to start making your own bread. That just costs cents per loaf, 25 cents, 30 cents a loaf. So the reason I'm bringing this up is, where are people shopping? Which brings me to my second article here. Ransom's getting restarted on a computer because we had a few problems trying to get broadcasted out on a Restream. So as soon as we do, I'll tell you where we are on Rumble and Vigilante TV and also Brighteon right now, live streaming, brighteon.com with Mike Adams. Walmart beats earnings. So Walmart also increased its full year outlook. So what does that tell me? People are not going to Food Lion or Food City or whatever supermarkets near you. They are going to the cheapest place they can buy food. Now, hopefully they are buying bulk goods. But again, buyer beware. A lot of, wheat types of ground wheat, there's a ton of glyphosate in it. try to get something that you can do a little research on that's available in your area that is well known for, I wouldn't say 100% organic, but if you can find that, flour stores up pretty well. You got sugar. Anybody got a 50-pound bag of sugar out there? Why would you buy a 1-pound bag of sugar or those little bricks of sugar or something like in a box where they're cubed off already? Why don't you get a 50-pound bag of sugar? Learn how to store it correctly. Who's got 50 pounds of rice out there? Raise your hand. Anybody got 100 pounds of beans? I don't know. You should probably have like 10 different types of beans. They could back up and be your sprouting collection. If you're going to do microgreens with that, they could be your seed stock that you actually plant out in a garden that you maybe worked up some soil. And then you can also eat it. So when I look at beans, I'm looking at multiple reasons and uses for having that many varieties of beans. Black-eyed peas, my favorite, by the way. Anybody out there? Black-eyed peas is the softest bean. You don't have to, the stringless, super soft, supple. You just throw it in there and it's just, it's delicacy bean. Black-eyed peas, super easy to grow, abundant yields, nonstop for months and months. And it's probably the best tasting bean of them all. I've done a ton of bush beans, yellow bush beans, purple bush beans, rattlesnake beans, did a ton of them. But by far, my black-eyed pea is the best one. And you can get a whole bag of that for probably like $1, $1.25. Speaking of Walmart, we found a bag and I actually tested them out and they all sprouted out. They all actually broke and threw shoots up, which I was surprised. So we did a tray of microgreens with them and we put a bunch out. Walmart is where people are going to be moving to. So they are up tremendously because spending habits of people are moving to this lower tier, shall we say. So if I were going to be a wagering kind of guy, I would think places like Whole Foods are going to struggle immensely. You have some people who, and I look at survival of the fittest, and whoever survives through this, great. Whoever doesn't, you weren't meant to because you were just hooked on an old system that hooked you into consumerism, that washed your mind, that you could never escape that trap. If you don't survive through this, well, better luck next time if you believe in reincarnation. Your kids, I feel sorry for them because they're going to get dragged through your muck because you didn't change the philosophy or your view on this, on life, on the planet. We are in a massive shift right now. Electromagnetically, there's a tremendous amount of change going on. Earth's magnetic field is dropping. It was 5% per decade, but now it's trending toward 10% per decade or 1% per year. So if you can't, work that into an equation, like how your brain interprets information, how others interpret information, the way that reality is viewed in a different electromagnetic field state, it would make a lot of sense why the world is going into this sort of mental disorder on the planet here. Perhaps declining magnetic field is part of that. Again, I wouldn't discredit the media for, wandering a few souls off the track as well. But if you're listening to this message, please take heed that and I'm talking to myself too as I talk to you, it's just, we're going to need to start to get way more self-sufficient immediately. I mean, when Ransom and I had started the show, several years ago talking about this, it was pretty immediate. But I really, after talking with Lynette Zhang over the last week, did an interview with her. It's up on my YouTube channel there, Adapt 2030. And also, please come and subscribe to the new Civilization Cycle YouTube channel. It is of the belief of almost everybody who follows the economy that there are days, weeks, and possibly only months left before it completely unravels. And at that point, when it does, you'll either have food, bulk foods, or you can prepare meals like Little House on the Prairie. You're going to have your lards, your stored oils, your goose fat, all these kind of things. Duck fat, goose fat, lards. just regular oils, if you will. Crisco's not really the best, but if you can find some lard from a proper butcher. The tallow, for a better term, you're going to have to start immediately thinking this way and living this way. A lot of people are just going to check out. And if you do, please leave your resources for somebody else that wants to stay in the game and take our planet back and fight through this darkness. If you choose to check out, that's your own responsibility. That's your own choice. But please allow us to use the resources that you have left behind so we may continue in this battle of good versus evil, light versus dark. And it's so clear to see the veil has been split wide open here. There's absolutely no way that you can't not see it any longer. And Ransom, are you back online with us here? I saw you come back on. I see you. Well, Ransom Godwin, I think, has joined us again after a technical difficulty. I just been rambling. Ransom, are you with us here?
Yeah, I'm here. Yeah, I don't know. I'm having all kinds of issues. First it was my computer, and now the streaming platform that separates it had to reset, I guess, because I started it again. But I think we're up everywhere now.
All right, tell us where we are tonight, because with the stream, by the way, we've gotten on a couple new networks. So again, Red Pill Projects brought us on here, and thank you, Josh, for bringing us into Red Pill Project. Also with Mike Adams over at Brighteon.com on our live stream over there. Thank you, Mike, for allowing us and pulling us in. Also on your platform, Jeff Berwick, thank you for bringing us in as well over on Vigilante TV. We're streaming live there. And Ransom, where else are we tonight? Rumble on the Adapt 2030 channel, and list me off a couple others in case people want to get on their favorite platform.
I believe we are on Brighteon, Rumble, several Facebooks, Twitter, and I think like 4 YouTube channels. And next week, we're going to be on Instagram as well, and a Facebook page that's specifically for our show. They just, for some reason, make you wait a long time before they allow you to live stream. Those platforms are already set up, and I think first next week will be Instagram will be added to the mix, and then the week after that, the Civilization Cycle Facebook page.
Yeah, for those of you out there listening, we have rebranded the show from Mini Ice Age Conversations to Civilization Cycle. We think that bringing in a wider audience with a deeper discussion about economy, food, cycles that we've seen through time, population, they all kind of just wander into one, larger tapestry that makes a very large picture in front of you of where our world has been, how it's reset several times, and where we sit right now on top of another reset. So, history is rhyming very cleanly here, and what we can garner from the past will help protect us in the future. So, Ransom, I'll let you go, man. Thanks for joining tonight. You heard me kind of talking about these different things with the food, but I was curious what you're seeing, also from your viewpoint on how the economy, you can't gaslight anymore. Everybody's seeing it. It's really difficult to gaslight people on, hey, it's a great economy. It is visibly for everybody. They're questioning the news now and even laughing at co-hosts and people trying to bring financial news and whatnot. Even commentators are simply laughing in their face at these things that they're talking about now.
Right. Well, you have, the cackling lady going place to place talking about how when she gets in office, she will definitely fix this economy because, they're at the same time gaslighting you that it's super great. They've made a wonderful economy. The grocery store it's not our fault. It's our fault if it's doing good, but it's not our fault if you have to pay more there. But what's so funny about it is she says on day one of her, when she gets in office, forgetting the fact that she has been in office for 4 years. So where was that help 4 years ago? Right? Why weren't anyone moving for these supposed new ideas that are all of a sudden going to happen when she gets in office? Why weren't they working on those 4 years ago? And the answer to that is there is no plan for recovery. The plan is to shred us down and make us completely broke, completely finished transferring whatever generational and inherited wealth there was away. Well, just here in America, not even worldwide, because we know that there's a worldwide issue going on too, but just in America, there's not enough homes for the amount of people looking for homes, and the empty ones cost too much for people to get in. So the people that are stuck in the rent cycle are never going to be able to get out of that cycle because, well, they pay high gas prices, utility prices. They have to spend whatever they have on food and then gasoline to get them back and forth, to their employment. So a lot of people are in rough shape right now. So for them to continue to gaslight and say that the economy's great, we've never been better as far as that goes, that's obviously made for TV entertainment. That's the only way I can explain it. Every article, that's because you have the two different worlds, right? There's two different set of facts. There's two different sides of ideas. And depending on which side of that idea, you might be paying attention to other things. Some people say, look at all the crazy stuff's going on. It's obviously tumbling. But then you have the other side that are having, I don't know if it's delusions or they just really believe their set of facts that things are wonderful and they can only get better if we have more of it. Unfortunately, what I'm seeing around the world is a complete Marxist takeover of every region on Earth. There's no other way you can put it. Formerly free countries are nightmarish, tyrannical hellholes. I wouldn't want to go to any of these countries anymore. The idea that I would want to travel to Europe. No way, man. It's just as dangerous as maybe having to go through China. What is the difference? If you can be arrested for things that are opinions or alternate facts, or maybe you're just calling stuff as you see it and it's just an opinion, whatever the case may be, that can land you literally behind bars. They're showing us more than ever that we do, in fact, live on a prison planet, and it's set up like a prison system. The only, question is whether or not you can figure out sort of a jailbreak code for your life. And I think that we can. There's still room to navigate, but eventually there's going to be no place left to hide from the tyranny that is not only technocratic in nature, but global in its, presence. It's everywhere. You can't go anywhere around the globe without going to a country and finding out that there is some aspect of crazy tyranny about some regular human activity that you might be doing. It's horrible. It's definitely like a Twilight Zone. So we have surpassed, or the shark has jumped the point, or jumped the ship. We're in that science fiction fantasy land that is now fact. It's totally bizarre. And that's why even countries are now starting to call books of prophecy like 1984 or things like that as some kind of, hate speech or something that needs to be censored, so people don't realize, hey, wait a minute. These ideas we've already gone over. These ideas we've already fought major wars over. These ideas have been printed, published, and accepted for generations, and now we're reassessing and reevaluating what it means to be a culture or a free market system that, a lot of these things we've never had actually, but we've had the taste of it. We've had the taste of freedom of speech. We've had the taste of private property and the pursuit of happiness, and we've also had the taste of a free market. Unfortunately, crony capitalism is more than happy to go down the Marxist road because they've already made it. They're already in the club, the club that's, not big and you're not in it. As George Carlin used to say, it's a big club and you're not in it. That's what's going on everywhere. And society, you can look the other way, but all the signs of society tearing itself apart, and this is without the governments or bankers or none of that. Just on a societal level of in between human communication and basic humanity is cracking around the world. There are groups of people that want to lock up or kill other people for basic ideas. And then what's the response from the group that is being told that they can't live their lives. Well, obviously, eventually, something has to give, something has to crack. Hopefully, it's not worldwide civilization, because it really does seem like they're done with all of these styles of waves of humanity and everything that they've built. Everything from architecture to what's art, to political ideas, to basic, fundamental, unalienable human rights is being questioned to the point that everyone wants to debate whether or not we should, change those ideas or restart them, or maybe there's a time for a debate that we shouldn't even have inalienable rights. And these groups of people are getting larger and more powerful, and they're funded by the elite. So there's your connection. So they're just letting it run rampant. I hate to see what's going to happen, actually, in either direction, because, some strange things may go either way, depending on who takes office in the U.S., but some things are never going to change, like your caste as a non-elite, so to speak, your caste that we live in as the middle class or the lower class or even mildly wealthy. All of those people, all of those groups are not in the club. They're not in it, and they don't get no say-so in the geoengineering and cultural engineering and all of these things. They don't really get a hand in it. They just pay for it. So it's just like the scientists that only get paid for one type of science. And everyone that has two brain cells in their head realizes that we were taught the idea of science, which is to question things and then test them and find out if we can, have the same result multiple times until we think that that is the way it is. But that's not how it's done now. One group of people tells you that this is reality, and you're stuck in the position whether or not to buck the system, to fight go against the grain, to fight the current, or to just accept whatever dogma they're giving you. And we see that when it comes to climate, politics, everything. It's getting to a point that, maybe both sides are going to come to an agreement that there must be a reset to get rid of old thinking. And I think that the elite are planning on this, not only using religion as a tool, using political ideas as a tool, but lastly, but not least, food will be a tool. And then see how fast certain people will change their opinions based on their circumstance in life. So in other words, people are more willing to go out on a limb and accept, maybe bad ideas if it means that their group gets taken care of better or they get to eat, because that goes down to the basic family level. I'm going to do whatever it takes to make sure my babies eat. Now, hopefully, that stays in the realms of being a moral person, because I hope so. But if things are going to collapse and, regardless if they're going to collapse all the way or just the moral compass of a civilization is going to collapse, well, you're basically in that Mad Max scenario. You might not be fighting over gasoline, but you're fighting for your right to pursue happiness, to have a full belly, to decide your future and the way that you want to progress with your evolution and your children's evolution, their education, and lastly, their protection when it comes to competing in the future. This goes back up to the national level. And, I asked, it was a couple of days ago, I was asking different AIs, like Grok and Chat GPT and other ones, which nations are likely to collapse. And they have a varied, different opinion only in the reason. But the same countries seem to be listed as those that are going to collapse. And that includes the United States, Great Britain, China, Russia, the Ukraine, Venezuela, the list goes on for various different reasons. And if a censored AI algorithm can make a list of the top 10, we should be able to do the same thing. And unfortunately, those lists overlap. The AI is pretty smart as far as which ones to pick, unfortunately. But we got to remember that is part of the flow of the control of ideas. So we have to back it all the way up to the family level and start planning out how you want the culture around you to be. And there's no other way to do that, I think, but the classic, term lead by example, right? And I found this to be true in life. So if I start gardening outside, my neighbor wants to know what I'm doing. My neighbor sees me doing things and they think, you know what, I can do that. I'd like to have that. I could probably do it better than them. And you get sort of a little friendly competition going. But when I think times are going to get tough, people are going to realize that that is the path forward. To break everything back down to the human condition, what do I need first? A roof over my head, a full belly, clean water to drink, and then we can talk about all of those, estranged political ideas of freedom or Marxism or, whichever side of the end of the paradigm you're stuck at right now. Unfortunately, for people around the world, they're put in a position where they don't get to choose, that debate. For us here in the U.S., we still, I think, have breathing room, but we need to rein it in right now, or we're going to be in the same position as the people running around in Venezuela wondering where their next meal's going to come from.
Yeah, I had the Patrick Henderson, and he was talking about how this is the 21st century already out of the UK, and he was also talking about which countries are not part of the Great Reset. So coming at it from a completely different angle. And he was saying one of the number one countries to think about in Africa is Rwanda, believe it or not. They have the most reliable electricity, they have some of the best road systems, some of the highest education, hospitals, healthcare, etc. in Africa, Rwanda of all places. And it's right there, really green, varied in, agricultural, and it can continue that interoperability with Kenya and Tanzania also. So there's like these different ECOWAS trading blocks that are starting to form out. So this is the kind of new world we're talking about here, where your top pick to survive during this time is Rwanda in Africa. Put that in perspective for a minute. Are things that off the rails here that they're not even talking about Canada, United States, New Zealand, Australia, anywhere in Europe except the Eastern Baltics, like Albania or somewhere Slovenia, or excuse me, not Slovenia, but Serbia, and these kind of places, that Rwanda makes one of the top choices to survive the reset, and anything China-centric that has cooperation economically with China on the Belt and Road Initiative, that none of these Western nations are even in that running at all on the top 25 slots, none of them, zero, that your possibility is choosing an African nation to survive through this. This is the world we have just moved into. Anything Russian-centric, Russian investment, and I do a lot of Arctic century study because Andy Schecterman and myself, he works up with Miles Franklin, we're always going back and forth, talking about, the BRICS nations, which types of development projects are going off in Africa and also in the Arctic, because there's Northern Arctic route up there. They call it the Northern Route, the Northern Sea Route. Well, that's totally dominated by China and Russia. Barely anything is touched by the United States up in the Arctic. And what's interesting was looking at that, United States has lost its last icebreaker, catastrophic engine failure. So as of this year, if we cannot get our icebreaker repaired, we will have none, and we will need to rely on Canada in lieu of the United States icebreaking quote-unquote fleet, which has been reduced down to one single ship. Now, there's another one in the Southern Hemisphere, but they got to bring it all the way back up here to the Northern Hemisphere. The U.S. is so far behind on the game that we quit building icebreakers back in like 1980s. Russia just built 7 new ones, all nuclear powered, over the last 5 years, and there's 7 or 8 more slated. And I think it was St. Petersburg Shipyard. Don't quote me on that, but I think it was St. Petersburg Shipyard. They're, have commissioned 7 new icebreakers, in addition to the ones they already have. They're setting up Arctic fleets. They're setting up all these new innovations and the technology to survive for container shipping, overland transport for extreme brutal conditions that would rip apart anything that we have down here. You think about a tire. Well, tires don't work up at the North Pole or close to it, like 80 north in the middle of winter. Our tires here, there's no way. They would explode and shred, and there's no way. So they come up with this entire new industry of just the most massive innovation to run the Arctic route. And the reason they can do that is because they can deliver between China and Russia through the Arctic all year long because they're running nuclear icebreakers up and down. China also up and down. And that is completely outside of any sea lane that the U.S. controls. This is the direction it's going. This is why I talked to Andy Schechtman about this, because then we're talking about Africa and the Northern Sea route. Like they're establishing different corridors outside any kind of U.S. power. And the way to pay for this, too, is outside a parallel system running with BRICS pay. So once we get into this, gold asset-backed currency type of thing that we're moving to on the BRICS side, and they have their own trading, routes outside of any control, they will dominate at least a part of the planet, probably 45 to 50%. Well, if you think things have shrunk now, when the 7 Western nations are firewalled off in part of Europe, how do you think that's going to bode with us? China wouldn't even sell us anything. Russia wouldn't even deliver any gas to the EU. At some point, Russia's cutting off the gas, and I just saw some pumping stations over in Ukraine were taken off line as they did that push north into Russia. They took out one of the major pumping stations, and apparently some noticeable reductions in natural gas getting to Europe are already right now. But this is weird because it's just before winter. You almost have to look at it like Russia let that happen to turn off the gas, so they couldn't be blamed that the natural gas got cut off for Europe this winter. Now think about a 5D chess move on that. Ukraine sitting there going, "Oh, we just pushed into Russia," and Russia's laughing, going, "Yeah, we needed to get in there and blow up that pumping station because we couldn't be blamed on it. You did the dirty work for us. Thank you very much." Because in a wartime situation, if I got enemies at all my gates, I'm going to turn off their energy and food. And that's exactly what's happening. So we get this whole entire flip here happening. Like, what countries are not part of the Great Reset? And that's what we need to look for. And also, you were talking about food there, Ransom. And Kamala, her first economic plan proposes, this is off Zero Hedge, price controls to combat inflation. Now, where have we heard price controls before? But see, it's not price controls on like energy. It's price controls specifically on corporate gouging on groceries and imposing stiff penalties around the food industry, which kind of winds right back into the introduction with Subway is tremendously at the point of laying off and closing stores, 19,000 of them, because they can't compete in this value meal war that's going on. Yeah, they'll have some traffic. Don't get me wrong. It's not going to go to zero. But the amount of money that's coming in through those doors to sustain those businesses, those franchises, is not going to be enough to keep the lights on. People are bailing anyway on the fast food. It's getting way too expensive. Now, at the beginning of COVID, it was the cheapest game in town. It was the cheapest food you could buy, and everybody started to rely on fast food because, hey, it's way cheaper than DoorDash or going in and cooking your own food and all these things. You couldn't go into some stores. Hey, we'll go to fast food. It was the lifeline for a minute, but that has hyperinflated away, double, triple, quadruple prices from the COVID beginning. And now so many of these stores are right at the edge of going out of, how many, 19,000 Subway stores close. How many people is that? That's way more than 100,000 layoffs. And when you talk about price controls, just for me as like a snapshot, if I say to you, price controls in Russia, price controls Soviet Union, price controls Cuba, price controls Venezuela, what picture comes to your mind? Well, for me, mile-long food lines, meat coupons, shortages, food on the black market. That's where your constitutional silver breaking up those 1 ounce rounds into change on a quarters, dimes, or war nickels from 43 to 45 with the silver content here. That's what I envision and see as price controls. And they want to bring that to America. Do you think literally that companies are going to want to stay in business when that happens? I'm personally going to say, no. If I was a business owner and I was going to be forced to lose money to stay in business under price control, I would absolutely close my business. I would close it down in a second before I would lose money to be forced by the state to rein in on my prices as everything else is rising. I'm out, gone. And so many other people would feel the same way. Now, the corporate BlackRock controlled entities at the, market level, stock market listed companies, they're going to be the only game left in town. And remember what they did during the vid, what hoops and hurdles you had to jump through to even go get in the store to access food. If you think that was tough, you've seen nothing yet. Nothing. Because when you need ration cards to go get things in the stores, and on top of that, they're asking for other things as different diseases run across the planet, and you think that's going to be a safe place to go, because Ransom and I talked about this last week, going to these kind of places is going to be a dangerous venture in the future. If we come into price controls, are you kidding? There'll be absolute lawlessness across every street in America, unless those streets police themselves. But when we come to where the government is going to control the food, the price of food, the distribution of food, what companies can raise in terms of pricing, you're just going to watch an enormous amount of places plunge and more unemployment, and you're going to get into this feedback loop. And at the same time, all the Federal Reserve is going to do is just create more money. They're just going to keep printing. And the more they print, and see, that's what I don't get is this, like you hit it on the head there, Ransom. It's like, been in power for 4 years, supposedly. But then, they don't get to the root of the problem. So you're going to tell me right here that the possible new, if elected, conglomerate on the left here wants to go to price controls. They don't understand the basic principle that the Fed has been printing far too much money, that the reason that things are getting so expensive for the American consumer, amongst others, it's the same in Europe, it's the same in Canada, it's way worse in Canada. It's happening in Australia to a degree not seen here in America yet, that somehow fixing the prices is going to solve it. That's insane thoughts. They don't even identify the real underlying cause of it. Printing trillions of dollars every quarter and every 3 months, and we print another trillion or $1.2 trillion, we're looking at 4.5 trillion new printed dollars by every single, that's at just the end of this year. So by the end of 2025, it could be 8 trillion. That is the root cause of it all. That's the root cause of all the prices going up. This hyperinflation that we're on the cusp of in the beginning of is happening in real time right here. And they want to blame it on the companies raising prices. Well, I would turn it around and go, whoa, hold on the issuance right there. Hold on the issuance right there of another treasury bill issued so you can print more money. What are you doing? We're buying back our own bonds in this super speed loop of issue more, we'll buy it back, issue more, we'll buy it back. So if they can't even identify the base problem of even causing anything, then they're never, ever going to solve the problem. And the only thing about price controls is just more overreaching power on top of the citizens. And I guarantee you there's going to be a huge amount of conditions for you to access that food. Be forewarned, this is not for your benefit. This is just strictly about control. And by the way, before I turn it back over to Ransom, our new website for the radio show and podcast is live right now, civilizationcycle.com. If you go there, we have our player list so you can listen to previous shows. Also, go down to the bottom and put in your email where you can get our live show notes. So at the end of the show, by next week, I will break this down into 8 bullet points of things we discussed tonight so you can remember that. It's fresh on your mind. You can start the conversations, do more of your own research. Just go there, put your email in there, and we'll get that out to you on a weekly. And also at the bottom there, buy us a double espresso for those of you out there that want to support the channel and support the show. But anyway, Ransom, I just can't see how it can move forward if they can't see that this excess money printing is really driving the prices. You see where I'm going with this. Like, everything's almost meant to problem, reaction, solution it into sticking you inside of a canary cage, never to escape again.
Well, we're definitely in that. When I see her talking about price controls. Where if I see anybody talking about price controls in America, I think back to the Weather Underground people and their plans for the future. Their main target were people that thought that they could live in a free capitalist society and use the free market for their pursuit of their happiness. They didn't like that idea. So they promised that, eventually they were going to build a big enough group of people to get into the White House. And once they did that, that was, the peak of their plan. They were going to transfer wealth. They were going to end certain, ideas. And then we get the group of characters that you've been seeing recently. And you think about like the whole gang. It all always comes out of Chicago, most of the group there. And when you really dig deep into the histories of that, you'll know there's a lot of ties to organized crime and different stuff. Other people back in the past that notoriously price rigged asked for protection money so that people could, do their business. And that kind of morphed into a political group that mixed into the Weather Underground people. And then you skip forward to the future, you have mayors opening up basically, essentially a communist grocery store that obviously and predictably failed when the government takes over food and food prices and availability. It's going to fail. You can ask any country that's ever done it. That's what happens. So what we're getting to see is a friendly side of Marxism. And what I mean by friendly is that everybody's still smiling and pretending that they're, rearranging things for the common guy. But that's not what's going to happen. So now let's bring this grocery store ran by the city to a national level. And what you'll see is exactly the same thing. So those same people that wanted to gather up 25 million people and shove them in re-education camps in the Southwest. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, just kind of Google Weather Underground and interview from FBI informant. And he'll lay it all out there. And then think, of recent times and ask yourself, has all of those things not happened in exactly that way? And then there's also Yuri, the defector from the Soviet Union, laid out the plan, told us exactly what the plan was and how they were going to do it. We see that unfold in real time, exactly that way, from the social engineering all the way over to trying to control markets. All of it is Marxist ideas. That's a simplified word for it. What we're really talking about is the global cabal of banking communists that go all the way back to the, Fabian socialists of Europe and on and on. They link up. They've been the controllers of things. And inevitably, it's going to go into a world communism mode. But they still have a lot of steps to get there. We're still where they're trying to push the people to supposedly picket for themselves, almost like, back in the day in Iran when they threw an election and they voted in fundamental extremism as their form of government. They had the choice. They voted in to have no choice, if that makes sense. And that's kind of what they're doing here. The Uniparty, no matter which side you pick, is going to gamble on the military-industrial complex for decades to come. So no matter what happens, you could probably invest in those stocks and make a lot of money. Those stocks are based heavily tied up with the heavy metals market. So the same things will be going up and down together. The more war we have, the more price of the metals will be worth because they use a lot of those precious metals and heavy earth elements to build things that blow up stuff. And now we're having a revolution at the same time as the Marxist behavior from politicians and everyday, citizens of countries around the world that are buying into it. We're also going to have a technological revolution in the short term, and that will be drone warfare. I've been seeing it over and over again. $1 million equipment totally devastated by what essentially is a $20 to $40 drone with the small explosives on it. It totally goes past all these computer systems designed for kinetic war systems like helicopters, tanks, and things like this. So we're about to see a whole new picture of what the world looks like. And it's going to be terrifying. I mean, I hate to be the Debbie Downer, but these things are unrolling. I see it happening in Europe. The drone warfare is going to spread from the Russian-Ukrainian border over to the neighboring states. They're going to get involved. It's already happening. And that is also happening over here in North America along the border. The cartels are using the same technology, same techniques. And, you know, you get into so many different topics, it's hard to blame a finger, but you'll start to see common denominators like pro-Marxist movements pushing for stuff like price controls. That's exactly communism. That's what it is. There's no other way around it. So all of these people that are on one side of things cheering it in is really sad to see, because we've seen it over and over again with other countries. It's obvious that the Chinese don't mind if that happens, because they know whatever kind of party system that will come about in the other nations will be more easy to manage and deal with their party, their uniparty, which will create a worldwide uniparty. You can see it in the politics in Europe, where the locals, and this is weird. I guess this was, like, if you really think about it, a master plan from all the way back to colonial days, because, you know, we colonized, they exploited all kinds of people around the world, and then reverse it, wait till, you know, hundreds of years passed, and then do the same tactics again to the new nations, and that's how they collapse it. So right now, you know, if you're an Irishman, you might want to get on a plane and move somewhere else. If you're English, you might want to get on a plane and move somewhere else. If you live in Spain, Italy, Turkey, or Greece, you might want to get on a plane and move somewhere else. And I don't just mean temporarily, I mean for good, because everywhere in Europe is going to change radically in the next 10 years. There's no stopping it at this point. It's a numbers game. And that's just what you're going to have to deal with. So over here in the U.S., we have the other side of the destruction of society, which is plainly and obviously connected to the Weather Underground and a Marxist movement. They want to turn the whole thing extreme left, which basically means for the everyday average single citizen, the individual, all those things that you think of as individual rights, gone. It will be replaced with groupthink and group rights. Now let's get into the food, since, you know, I was talking about that. Everywhere I'm looking, they're using drones. They want to switch over to drones and picking it up by ordering online. And we've talked a little bit about this. So, you know, what happens when the pizza guy keeps getting robbed and robbed and robbed and robbed? Well, the pizza guy is going to get replaced by a robot. Again, $20 to $60 worth of technology was what we're talking about in the new technological world. So these drones are going to be disposable, the ones that deliver food, the ones that are going to be delivering your mail, and people, there's going to be no security that goes along with it, and you'll just have to accept it. There'll be no customer service that you could call. And then I want to also point out, where is all the violence happening in the U.S.? At markets, at malls, at supermarkets, and things like that.
We'll be right back. Civilization Cycle, David DuByne, Ransom Godwin. Please remember to hit up our website, civilizationcycle.com. Drop your email in. We'll give you the show notes for what we've discussed for the last hour.
It's unknown if early man knew they would be the progenitors of great civilizations, or if they knew when their empires would fall and disappear into history. Fortunately for us as modern man, we can recognize that we are at the precipice, a point in history where we can see the cycle changing. Where we go from here is up to us.
How do you feed your families when the shelves are empty, the stores are shut, and there's no food available? What is the fastest, easiest, and most productive foods to grow? What is the quickest way to get somebody who has no skills at all up and running and producing very quickly? If you understand that we're at a point in history where it is no longer optional to be growing your own food, if you're like really freaked out and concerned because you've never grown food before and you don't have any skills, you don't know how to do that, but you know how important it is, then I want to let you know, however you stumbled here, you're in the right place. My name is Marjorie Wildcraft. I'm the founder of the Grow Network, and I have been the female leader in the survival and preparedness space for the last 20 years.
How to grow lots of food even if you have no experience, are older and out of shape. This is for people who want the fastest and easiest ways to produce healthy and delicious meat, eggs, and vegetables. Because you know that growing your own food is like printing your own money. During this webinar, you will get status of global food shortages, how long the crisis will last, how much space you need to grow food, easiest, highest calorie foods you can produce, a complete plan for producing all the food you need, how to get started today, regardless of season. Marjorie will show you the fastest, easiest, and simplest ways to produce calories and nutrition, especially in a crisis and/or grid-down situation. The assumption is that you have no experience and you need to start producing food immediately. The most popular part of the webinar is the Q&A session at the end. So please come prepared with your questions.
Pro Clear Cleanse is the most powerful spray cleaner on the market today. No elbow grease necessary. Pro Clear Cleanse cuts through grease and grime like a chef's knife. Finally, the one cleaner that can do it all. Powerful surfactant cleaning technology cleans ovens, glass, porcelain, even polished wood. Environmentally friendly, less packaging and waste with no harsh smells, pet safe, child safe. 5 tablets equals 1 bottle of traditional cleaner. It's 5 months of cleaning for a fraction of the cost. Behold the grease-erasing power of Odor Crush. Simply drop a tablet into your bottle of warm water and shake it so it is evenly diluted. Spray the surface you want cleaned. Let set longer for tougher grease. Take a paper towel or a reusable cloth and wipe. Done and done.
Howdy, partner. You know people are having dinner and the smart ones are eating beef. Let me tell you a brief history, or more accurately, a beef history of dinner. Domestication of cattle happened around 8000 BC, but that's not when beef became what's for dinner. We've been eating beef since times before history. The earliest cave paintings have beef eloquently depicted on the walls. Those cave drawings of the hunt were for the aurochs, a primitive bovine. That's right, beef. Like I said, people are having dinner now, and the smart ones, well, they're eating beef. Americans want great food today, but we also want to have great food to eat if things go south in a hurry. Unlike most companies that take the cheapest, worst parts of the cow, then turn them into beef crumbles, whatever that is. They freeze-dry them in hopes that their customers will never actually try to eat it. Our premium beef cubes are sous vide, freeze-dried, and ready to be eaten right now, or in a decade from now. We want you to eat our beef now, so you can buy more. Prep with steaks, not with beef crumbles. This is a high-quality product. It's all American beef and 100% natural. None of that craziness of lab-grown meat and mRNA jabs. Our beef has a shelf life of 10+ years. This is high-quality cooked and freeze-dried beef for long-term storage or not. Eat well today and eat well tomorrow. Click the link in the description to get your Prepper beef with Prepper All Naturals, so you will always know what's for dinner.
Don't forget to sign up for the show notes to get information we sometimes can't relay on social media outlets. Sign up at oilseedcrops.org/MAYAC radio show.
Even in our own solar system, you know, if you could just think bigger about everything in the media and, you know, popular culture has wrapped you into this limitation thing. Oh, there's limited resources, not enough land, there's not enough water, there's too much, you know. Where do we go from here? Now, just before the end of the show, I had a thought that I was on the tip of my tongue. We're no longer talking about hypothetical communism. I mean, these people coming into office, if they do get into office, they want to institute federal price controls on all food, institute a federal minimum wage, and here's the thing, that is going to make every corporation go out of business. And as we get started with the second hour here, I wanted to talk, I've been listening to a couple prophecy videos, and one of them that I was listening to makes total sense, but the way that it was perceived, it was some kind of natural disaster. But if you take businesses out of business and banks fail and there's no credit, this ends up with the same vision that the person saw, where there were no crops growing anywhere in America. but every home had a garden just out of survival. The Dust Bowl was raging again because none of our fields were planted. And the dust clouds could be seen from space sweeping across. So I said, sweeping from space, satellites must still be operational. Somewhere in the world's got to be operational. If satellite images, or he was up above being shown this dust, you could actually see from space the like massive dust clouds that would just blanket the United States. But this is the one thing not a lot of people talk about. If you really want to go to the socialist/communist, we will not have credit for the farmers to be able to plant the crops to grow our food. And that's not something widely talked about. It's very on the edge of even being known. Most people think their bank accounts or stocks or IRAs, this, that, and the other. But if farmers don't have access to credit, you don't have a food supply, period. Forget about the logistics and the cold chain and whatever else that involves in on your animals and your milks and cheeses and butters and things, on the cold storage on that. But just literally getting enough seed for a 1,000-acre farm or a 10,000-acre farm or a 100,000-acre farm, they do not pay cash. If you're running 100,000 acres on a business, agribiz size, your tractors, $1 million each, all running on GPS. You got probably $250,000 in maintenance on each machine each year. You're not paying cash for that. You're going out, $1 million on seed, fertilizer, fuel, at least on 100,000 acres. Your input cost into that's probably $200 an acre, just on the minimum there. So you're looking at what, 100,000 times 200. That's just on your base minimum input costs. Like, nobody's paying cash for that. So if you yank the banking system out and you're all cheering, rah, 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 communism, rah, 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 federal price bans or, price controls on food, rah, 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 and you wipe out the ability for farmers to procure what they need to plant your food, you are starving yourself. And see, that's the most insidious, insane thing, is they got the average moron out there cheering. They want my food prices are too expensive. You need to control the government to get control them, those bad companies. No. How about look at the bad Federal Reserve first? Why don't we look at the wasteful spending secondly? Look at the atrocious overseas gifts thirdly, and then wind that back for a second. Go, wait a second. That all stems from like mismanaging from the Fed. End the Fed. That would be a great step to like reestablishing some sort of normalcy and balance back into our world again, at least on the U.S. side of things. End the Fed. So you talking about federal price controls on food? Yeah, let's vote for that. You're voting for your own starvation. They have absolutely flipped the script. They know you're that illiterate about how the credit system works. You know nothing about farming. They're banking that you know nothing about the food supply, except you're getting a box of junk out of the store that's been banned with 380 chemicals. For the rest of the world, that's still in our American food supply. They're banking on you not knowing a single thing on how the world really operates with money. You're never educated about money in our schools. You're educated to go get a job here and pay taxes. That's your education. You're not educated on how the credit system functions to be able to put food in your belly. Do you think those supermarkets pay cash for deliveries coming in on 50,000 cases of 200 different goods delivered in a single week? Of course not. If you can't understand the basic premise on how supermarkets operate on 30 or 60 or 90-day letters of credit to then pay back those producers on a steady schedule, if that evaporates, so does everything on your store shelves. And for you to sit up there and cheer that is absolute, it just shows pure ignorance. Pure ignorance. But it also shows that you welcome the destruction of not only yourselves, but your families, of not destruction, but starvation. One of the worst ways to perish is starvation. Would you want to have no food for 3.5 weeks and then look like, something out of southern Sudan in the 1980s with a big puffy belly before you finally perish? I don't think so. That's the way you want to take it. And then you, being a useful idiot, once you're used up by the state for implementing its policies, look what's happened through the past every single time. The useful idiots who push these things to get them implemented on a wider basis are generally done away with after their usefulness is over. Again, if you didn't learn from history, you're about to. When they come for you in the middle of the night and not me because you've already used up and too many of your cadre is getting too powerful and they take you out, well, that's just your silliness. But anyway, done rambling here. Revolution Radio, thank you for allowing us to speak freely tonight about some of these issues, especially the food right here, you know. So if you consider free speech something of value, which is becoming less and less common around the planet, support Revolution Radio right here. Consider a donation right up at the top in the browser bar. Donate. Several ways to donate. If you got a crypto, or if you want to write a check, hey, everything good. The servers are being reestablished as well for faster connections, listening, different kind of comment box. Everything is being reestablished right now. Studio B will be back online probably next week. Studio A back first. Studio B comes as the reset. You know, they move servers, they change states because, well, sometimes you just need to do that to be more functional in the real world. So if you consider free speech or this availability of information outside of our newsletter at civilizationcycle.com, definitely jump over to revolution.radio and support this for its running costs, production costs, hosting costs, etc. But Ransom, yeah, well, the last thing I wanted to say is, you know, watching a bunch of prophecy videos lately, they all conclude the one same thing. There's one running theme through all these prophecy videos. It's not about a comet striking, or it's not about a nuclear thing. Those are not. Each person has their own like kind of interpretation of a different event across the planet of one thing. What is standard and uniform across all these prophecy videos? Starvation and food shortages. Now, again, I'm going to bring it back to the base cause of that. It's not because some natural event bent the weather systems. That's more of a gradual effect that we've been seeing play out over the last, say, 5 to 7 years that was noticeable. It's really dented a lot of food production globally. That's why a lot of food prices are going up, too, because the lack of what would have been massive crop yields. Each year, our crop yields globally in the grains continue to decline because of bending jet streams, cloud cells, just wrong seasons, you know, these sudden stratospheric warming events. There's a huge amount of mix-ups occurring right now in our terrestrial weather systems. Well, you need that reliability to plant and harvest food on certain dates. So that has already been thrown out of the mix. I've seen our global grain reserves decrease 2/3 since I started the Adapt 2030 channel in 2014. The global grain reserves are down 2/3 since I started my channel. That was a given. That was the whole premise of the channel, that we're going to start to grow less food, prices are going to rise, and we're going to find ourselves in this exact situation. And again, back to the prophecy videos, they keep coming back to there's no crops, no food, people are starving. Like you got people walking around looking for food, willing to volunteer, work on whatever. I think it's not a natural phenomenon. I think there's a collapse in the global finance system that does not allow our farmers to plant the fields the way they used to. And if it's happening here in America, it's sure happening in Australia. Guarantee it's happening in Canada. So just think about that for a moment. If you take Canada, the United States, and Australia grain production, that'd be the wheat, the corn, the soybean, offline, then the food has, or the globe has, you know, again, far less than 50% of what it would need to feed itself. Hence, a lot of these things start to manifest. So again, I don't know, chicken and the egg. Welcome back, Ransom. Time to lay an egg in the nest. Stay away from my chickens.
No, well, kind of the point I was getting to is that I see trends, and these trends seem to be made to fail. So I was showing the audience when you were talking a whole parking lot of AI cars that were stuck in the parking lot.
No, it's not that.
Right? They were kind of stuck in the parking lot, and all the lights and the bells and the whistles were confusing the other AI cars, and they were just endlessly stuck in the sidewalk, right? And this is the technology that they're trying to move over to food. They want this to deliver your food. So I'm thinking they're setting it up for failure. Obviously, that's not going to happen. Obviously, that's going to get stolen, things like that, right? But it also points out another trend that's going on. Where is all the violence happening? Is it happening at your house? Is it happening in your neighborhood? Is it happening down at the Federal Reserve Building? Are there, protests out there? Are they happening at the embassies? No, none of that stuff. Where they're happening is shopping malls, Walmarts, shopping centers, grocery stores, markets, anything that has a bunch of business supposedly in it, right? Those are becoming the places you don't want to go. So in order to get around that, if you're a savvy, trendy citizen, well, you're gonna want to go to your neighborhood market, the one that's in your neighborhood. But even those are starting to have those problems. So now what do? Well, you order the products online and you just pick it up. You pick it up and then you drive right home, right? So what happens though if maybe you're in San Francisco or in LA or in Las Vegas or pick a city in Europe and they say, hey, the Pope's coming, no one can drive anywhere, or we're going to have some event down here, you can't drive through here. How are you going to get your food then? Well, it's going to be delivered, right? They're going to make an exception for delivery drivers. No. By little robots. They want to send the little robots. And they're introducing this anywhere and everywhere, just about. So now the kiosks are robotic. Your bank teller is most likely robotic if you use if you don't have an old school bank and actually pull up to the window and talk to somebody. You're probably using the machine that lets you deposit and withdrawal and transfer and all of that stuff. So you've already got a robot for that. The customer services are all robots. You can't get through to a real person. The government agencies, the government offices, robots, AIs. And they're switching it all over to that. And I don't think it's because it would be more efficient, it would get done better or faster or any of that stuff. It's simply to remove the human out of the equation of distribution, production, and even transporting, like moving it from one place, and their ability to make money off of those three things, right? So now we're seeing automated, and it's so weird because I talked about this ad nauseum before it happened about, next thing you know, you're complaining about you don't get paid enough, the minimum wage needs to go up. Well, obviously, what's next? They replace you with a robot, somebody that you just plug in. And it flips burgers all day. It doesn't complain. It doesn't have drug addictions. It's not late for work. It doesn't have, baby mama drama or nothing. And those are all the lower income jobs. They're not the high income jobs. They're not the ones that you make a lot of money at. No. Those are the low income, low skilled working jobs. The same ones that millions of immigrants are now fighting for, along with the people in the U.S. that also want those same jobs because those are the ones available. So what happens when you have more people but less jobs, more automation but less money? Well, it seems like it's heading for a bubble pop. All those technologies, they're not really for you. They're for the next tier of society that's to come. Before that, any of that stuff can work, there has to be a lot less people. And the only way to get rid of people is war, famine, or disease. Now, ask yourself, are the people that are in charge of things, are they more likely to spread war, famine, and disease? Or is it your countrymen that need jobs and produce things if they could compete with, first it was, sweatshop type things, or countries that have, they want to make money and their money isn't as worth. That whole thing happened all the way since Nixon, right? We switched who was making stuff. We started sending all our factories overseas. So people that don't get paid the same amount as we get paid will do more work, and the company benefits. But now we don't need them anymore. They have now built an automation system. So think about all of the millions, if not, close to a billion Chinese workers that need jobs, that need things to do. Well, they have been steadily building an infrastructure that doesn't require one thing. That's them. That's the masses of lower income people. They don't need them anymore. Now they've built the infrastructure to replace their self. So what happens when you ask for more for minimum wage so you can have a living wage and, pay all your bills and maybe have $5 left over at the end of the month? Well, too bad you cried about it. Now a robot does that. The poor person at the window that gets mistreated and doesn't like their job, and they cry and they make TikTok videos about how horrible it is to work a full week of 40 hours and have to do real work that basically amounts to pushing buttons. Well, they are and already have been and are going to replace all of your jobs too, because you don't need them anymore. They don't do anything but stand there and push buttons. Now, no button needs to be pushed. The button pushes itself. Now you can roll up to a kiosk and say, I want a double meat, double cheese, green chili burger, and it'll come out a little hole on the other end, not involving anybody, yes, and I realize that it's not widespread and it's not in the little towns, but everything that happens in the city spreads to the little towns. I'm sure 5 years ago you didn't have Grubhub or any of these other, I forgot the name of them, but the ones that deliver food in the car. I bet you didn't have Uber and you didn't have this, but now you do, because there's smartphones that go everywhere you go and they link all of these things. And now there's no need for the base population. So you got to ask yourself, what are they going to do with them? All you have to do is scan through the news headlines and realize, well, you don't have to replace them. They're already dying. They're either dying of some kind of cancer, or, like whatever it is, their life expectancy is going down. And some of them are going to be participating in some kinetic conflict soon. So there's another way that they're going to be leaving. And then on top of it, they're infertile and don't want to have kids. You got the sinks and the dinks and all of these trends are all leading to civilization collapse. There's no other way around it. The only problem is there's millions of normal people in all of these places that are going to realize the same trends, the same things are happening. Then they're going to try, it's going to be hard, but they're going to try to take back that power and that niche. And the only way to do that is to offer old school things. Like I forgot where it's at, but there's a hamburger place that is doing like charcoal hamburgers and charcoal steaks and stuff, and the guy's actually out there grilling it, and people are giving him money hand over fist because it's nothing like what comes out of the box food stores. It's old school. It's 1980s barbecue time. That's what's going to save us. That's what's going to change things back. When people start realizing that they want real things and not automated things, real things and not fabricated things, real things and not imaginary things, which includes a lot of what's going on in the culture war, is whether or not someone's allowed to imagine things and that you have to play pretend with them and imagine the same thing. And it's being forced upon people by their governments now. You have to play pretend with us. If you don't believe what we say about the environment, then you could go to jail. If you don't believe what we're saying about population dynamics, you can go to jail. This is becoming a scary trend. And just like in communist China or Soviet Russia or, Nazi Germany, people are going to jail for ideas because the ideas are nonstop. When you see what's happening, you can't help but notice it. So all the normal people are now getting removed from society because they realize, hey, you're going to have to learn how to fix things yourself. Hey, that's not going to last forever. It's built on nothing. You can't just keep doing that. It's going to fall apart, right? All of those ideas are going to become crimes. Wait till you can't say that our money, our fiat system, is actually worthless paper and that it's based on nothing. It's not even based on the GDP. It's not based on gold. It's not based on anyone's wealth. It's just based on a couple of people's idea of what it should be worth right now. And if it ain't the way they want it, they'll print more or print less or destroy some of it or change the value of it, or just go ahead, and in my opinion, judging by the leaders of the uniparty, both right and left, the plan is actually collapsing of our stock market, collapsing of our food market, collapsing of our education, everything. They want people so dumb that they have to depend on their little device to tell them what facts are facts. And I don't know if this happened to you or how many people out there, but you can't even Google things anymore. Google is almost useless. You can't find results. It's all tailored to what they want you to see. And now it's gotten even worse. They've allowed their AI to take over it and decide what it thinks you're looking for and what it thinks that you want. It doesn't even look for what you asked for. It'll give you an AI version of what you think you want. And, like if you tell a lie enough times, people believe it's the truth. So if you're telling them everything is great and everything is going to be okay, just give me 4 more years or 3 more years or wait a little longer. Trust us with the science. We know the science. Any of that stuff, you can't afford it. You're going to have to think for yourself. You're going to have to figure out how to eat for yourself. You're going to have to learn how to make things, clean water, make food, store food. Otherwise, well, you're going to be stuck fighting at one of these centers where they're handing out either rations or people are shopping and there's people stealing what they have. It's just nuts. They have purposely let civilization crumble. And you notice that police are restrained. They're allowed to assault people and do things that don't fit in with our Constitution, but at the same time, they're not allowed to actually go out in a real way and stop crime. Like, have you ever wondered to yourself why there's drug addicts on the streets of your city? Like, if the police can't watch one, find out where he's going, and find out where he's getting it and end it, it's literally that simple. Every addict knows that. They go into a new place, they'll find somebody that looks like they're jonesing and talk to them and follow them, and wow, miraculously they find what they're looking for. So if you take that logic, you know that the law enforcement, police apparatuses and things are from the top down not really doing things in your benefit. So every aspect of society is crumbling, and people are denying that there's rust on the Titanic, or that there's an iceberg right there in front of you. What do we do with that? The answer is to just live in your reality, and that reality is of your choosing, just like it's of their choosing, except for you can decide to play with the future, what I call time travel. If you have an idea, a purpose, and you want that done, if you start acting right now or tomorrow, whenever it is, but soon you start doing it, you're going to realize that manifestation is a real thing. And it doesn't matter where you're from. If you start working for it, it's going to happen. And matter of fact, here's an article I'll show you when you respond to that basically they have found out that the elderly don't get dementia as often if they still have a purpose. And I don't mean just, hey, I'm visiting my grandkids and I'm watching golf on TV or, football. That's not purpose. That's waiting. That's waiting around. That's being pacified. A purpose is some kind of goal that you're actually going to do. And right now, I think Americans and Western civilization as a whole needs to realize that their kids are in a bad position. Their grandkids are in an even worse position. And the prior generations did it, but we didn't really help that much. So it's our job to make sure that they have some kind of purpose that they can attain in their life. So that should be our purpose right now is, yes, you can't change all the Marxism and crazy ideas instantaneously, but you can start working towards it. And in 10 years, leading by example, I think is going to be a revolutionary act, almost bordering a criminal act. And all I'm talking about is living like a natural human being on the earth, occupying some space, producing some food, cleaning some water, and trying to decide your own future in pursuit of happiness.
Speaking of purpose, the newly rebranded Civilization Cycle podcast, our purpose is to move into the top 10 podcasts on the planet to deliver more relevant information so we can all stay safe, form communities, and protect our families together. If you like that same concept, civilizationcycle.com website, go in, put your email in there, and we will get you show notes so you can also continue this conversation with others and swing this thing full circle. That everybody in our country and on this planet starts to talk about the same solutions for the problems that we are encountering at the moment. Because for me, I'm not willing to accept this intermittent fasting as part of the solution because food prices are scaling away so quickly that the average person working 2 jobs can't afford to eat. Now, I'm talking about silliness here. This is right along with this new proposed, if elected, price controls on food implemented by the government, but at the same time, they're putting out this eat, stop, eat schedule / intermittent fasting schedule based on your age demographic. So what does it mean? Eat, stop, eat. So you eat for a certain amount of time, you fast for a certain number of hours, and then you can eat again. So if you're 26 to 35 years old, you need to stop eating for 14 hours. And then during that 10 hours, to complete the rest of your 24-hour day, you're allowed to eat during those 10 hours. But the other 14 hours, you must stop eating. Now, if you're 36 to 45 years old, you're on a 16-8, meaning they want you to stop eating for 16 hours and only eat for 8 hours to re-nourish. They call it a re-nourishing window. Okay, is it like a drive-through window? I'm not sure. But here's where it gets weirder. The higher up the age scale you go, so if you're 46 to 55 years old, you're on an 18-6, which means that they want you to fast for 18 hours a day and only eat 6 hours, but savor the foods you love in those 6 hours. And here's where it gets maniacal. If you're 55 years or older, they want you to fast for 20 hours a day and give you a 4-hour window of indulgence of your cherished meals. Okay, I can only eat once during 4 hours because I can't cram my body full of food and just like jam it all in one single session. So what is it with the sliding scale here of age where the younger you are, the less you have to fast? The older you are they telling you, hey, older people, you need to give your food to the younger generation? Now, currently, this intermittent fasting, eat, stop, eat program is voluntary. This is just a quote unquote suggestion schedule according to personal test results, which wraps me back to Ransom's very first comment of the show earlier in hour number 1 when he was saying, talking about the science. Well, the science I understand today is you get the results that you pay the scientist to create for you of the results you want out of the studies you are paying for. It's not about science objectively anymore, where you rigorously test this. If it stands up, you can retest it. If it fulfills the same criteria of XYZ that you were looking for, and you can replicate that, okay, that becomes a law. Anything aside from that can be retested, reworked, and new information gleaned from that. But in today's world, scientific method is just, there's no such thing. I pay you money. I tell you I need an intermittent fasted schedule where the oldest of people, 55 and older, they can only, I need them to only eat 1 meal a day, basically. So I'm paying you to do a study for me. You need to work the numbers and make it look official. Use the cute words like indulge in cherished meals and, savor the food you love. And you come up with this sliding scale and, put out some sort of test, and I'm paying for that test. And then whoosh, voila, what do we get? We get this sliding scale of intermittent fasting based on what I would pay for the scientific result to be the result I paid for from the scientist that I bought to give me the exact result that I was looking for. That's science in a nutshell today. And it's kind of strange that this price controls for food, they're already drip feeding you this, that they want you to fast. And that's clear as day for me. They're not telling you fast for 20 hours. They're telling you you're only going to eat one meal a day, anybody over 55. It's clear as day here to look at this. And if you're 26 to 35, they're going to give you a little more food because they know if you don't have enough food, you're just going to get angry. And when you get angry being a young, strong lad at 26 years old or 27, one, pretty powerful, but 1,000 of you very powerful, very angry that you're not eating enough, that is something to contend with. And I'll tell you a story. The ancient Greeks, they would not allow their captives to train any types of weights or any types of physical body training because they were afraid if they were able to work their muscles and those who were captured in war, prisoners of war, taken from faraway flung places, brought back to Greece to work, they would rise up because of the strength of the young males. This intermittent fasting is almost the same thing here. Like, hey, boys, we'll give you enough food. Just don't get angry. We'll take it from the old people. Because if you're 70, you're way up this list here. Probably give like 20, 22 to 2 or 23 to 1. They're absolutely showing you in advance they're going to starve the old to feed the young so you don't revolt as fast. I don't know. Maybe I'm reading something into it, but I just can't see it any other way here, man. I just can't see it any other way. That's a little bit strange. And then, this comes off of that same from the Mises Institute, how price controls leads to socialism. And I don't care about your precious feelings. If you're going to vote for this garbage in, garbage out. Back to you, Ransom.
Yeah, I found that kind of interesting, the fasting thing, because, you can heal.
I'll send it to you. Let me see if I can send you the slide. Here it is. I'm going to send it to your Skype here. There you go. You can put it up on the screen and look at it if you want.
All right. Let's see here.
It's got pretty colors. It's got yellow and it's got some reds and it's nice words. And don't forget your schedule. They probably give you a free printout card that you get with your meat ration coupon. You probably get one of these intermittent fasting, laminated things to carry with you. And if you don't have it, your social credit score will be deducted because you don't have your fasting schedule in your pocket with you at all times. Let me see your papers.
Well, it's funny. The 18 to 25 and 26 to 35, that right there is the muscle power behind your nation that would be doing any kind of labor at all. I mean, basically that's it. Yes, people 36 to 45, but that's when they're slowing down. So those people anywhere under 45 need to eat a lot to be able to work or do anything. That's where energy comes from, obviously. So if you're doing the eat once before you go to bed, which I've been guilty of it, being poor and, or working all day and then coming home and eating one big meal. So I've kind of always done this type of thing. It's not really healthy if you're exerting a lot of energy. So you need 3 to 4 good, smaller, not super big, but nutritious meals throughout the day to keep your metabolism going and to power your body. And what they're talking about is a fasting that lasts too long. Like if you kept doing this, that's not healthy. Yes, fasting for a short amount of time, like a day or two, could reset your metabolism, reset some of the things in your immune system. It helps get rid of old damaged cells and things like that, but it's not intended for permanence. It's like a cleanse or, a fast. It's not meant to last very long. So what they're proposing is to lower the energy of everyone. And what you're talking about with the prisoners and why they would do that. And by the way, some countries are still like that, where they don't allow, here in the U.S., it's weird because it seems like they want to beef up the prisoners. I could speak from experience. I know that they eat well. They have access to all the exercise they want, and they practice MMA fighting constantly. I'll just put it that way. And hand-to-hand combat with the what do they call it? Cutlery. They have a lot of cutlery practice. I'll say it like that. So those people are being trained, which is weird because in that position, they're in a different, concept, a different place for the plan. But when you're talking about the general population, you're talking about like foreigners in foreign countries in a lot of places all over the world will ban you being able to exercise. They won't feed you nutritious food, and that's so you can't rebel. It's obvious. And you could go back into, what do you call it? I'm having a mind blank. Back in the Middle Ages, they would cut the population's food down, right? They would cut the population's food down, make sure they didn't have access to weapons or energy or education. And that way they didn't have to worry about any real usurping their power, no real revolution, no real force to fight them. Now it's out there. We've talked many times about moving the young military-age men around. Now, if you can get people to take on this, what you're going to have is a lot of weak, effeminate men who can't do work, can't be soldiers, can't do anything really. I mean, as far as traditional healthy man stuff, I'll just put it that way. So this is a prison rationing system, what this is. And you think about people that are older, they need the right amount of nutritious food to offset the aging process and, maybe other debilitating things that they have to deal with as age goes on. I know from experience, I'm in that 46 to 55 range. It's hard to do things that I did in those other age groups. I could go out and do some work. I still get it done, but, I pay for it in the evening. And if you're not eating on top of it, that's a recipe for disaster. That will hurt you. You'll get cramps. You'll have all kinds of problems. So we've talked about this many times. This is one wave of if someone was going to invade the earth, let's just say, it doesn't have to be an invasion from outside the earth, but if one were to invade and take power, you have to do those steps. You have to take away the food. You got to make your enemy malnourished, incapable of, being a force. And for a good example in recent times, that's exactly what the United States did to Iraq for 10 years. A lot of people don't realize Bill Clinton continued to bomb Iraq from Daddy Bush all the way to Baby Bush. So, they had the two things and they separated in history and in the minds of everyone. But actually, we were doing some major destabilizing campaigns that made way for the rise of ISIS and things like that later, because certain groups were still getting fed, certain groups were still armed, certain groups were still getting resources, but not everybody else. During the Clinton administration, we bombed baby food factories where they had dehydrated milk, and they would make those powdered milk for babies. It's easily transported. They were bombing the water filtration systems, the date plants, because dates are a major food source there. So by the time we rolled in 2003, they were hungry, they were malnourished, they were broken, and it was real easy to shock and awe. And then we had selective enforcement of the rules we were setting up, which allowed the rise of fundamental groups, fundamental extremists, I'll put it that way, to rise to power. And they didn't disappear. They just relocated them to Europe and the United States, just FYI. They didn't disappear. They're still active. They just moved locations because I have a feeling there's going to be a big business venture in the Middle East in about 10 years. They have a little more negotiating to do and a little more erasing the lines on the map and making new ones before they can do that. But that is definitely in the progress of happening right now. It all depends on what's going to happen here. Really, it's all most people in the U.S. are worried about, right? How's it going to go down here? Well, considering that there's plenty of personal defense systems in circulation here, we're in a unique position to say no here if things get too bad. They really can't enforce things on Americans like they can enforce things on other people. And, you could just ask the UK, Australia, New Zealand, all of these places. What's that like now? What's that like to have your government be able to tell you what to think, what to say, where to get your food, and when to show up at the camp for whatever reason is going on right now? And as we all know, they're concocting new reasons out there. There's some stuff they're warning about that's going to be worse than anything we've seen. And, we need to get prepared for that. So that's locked and loaded in case they need that. But I think what we're going to go forward with is some severe warlike operations right around the election and right after it, no matter who gets in charge. It doesn't matter who's in charge. Things are going to move forward. Mark my words.
And I might bring up a very, very important part. Since we're talking about food tonight, everybody's got the storable foods. Okay, but you're going to need a way to cook that. And you're going to need a way to boil and purify water if you don't have a clean water source. So if you're interested in a high-quality stainless steel kettle that creates a standalone wood-fueled stove for camping or preparedness, check out cckettle.com. That's cckettle.com. Support the show. You can use all-natural fuel, anything that'll burn, twigs, dry grass, birch bark, pine cones, animal dung, literally anything that'll burn. And within minutes, you have a very smokeless fire, so you're not drawing attention to yourself. You can cook the food, and at the same time, when you're cooking the food, you can boil the water. Check out these stainless steel kettles. Again, that's cckettle.com. Support Civilization Cycle. That's what the CC is for. But there's some integral things that not a lot of people are always thinking about when you're getting ready on the prep side. Cleanliness, hygiene. Like if you're going to have waste around, if you're in let's say an average neighborhood of America, if your water goes out in terms of like city water and you can't flush the toilets any longer, where are you going to be putting your waste? Just simple things like that. And if your power's out, how are you going to cook your food? If you start blasting off a huge giant fire out in your backyard, people are going to smell that. And if there's hungry people, 3 or 4 days later, they're definitely going to smell it twice as much. And that's one of the things about human physiology is the hungrier you get, the more sensitive and turned on your olfactory or scent or like smelling different smells turns on to like supernatural, borderline supernatural. Like you literally could smell a steak half a mile away kind of thing. It is, you turn into a superhuman sniffing dog nose at that time. It has been proven again and again and again. The hungrier you become from lack of food, the more pronounced your sense of smell becomes to literally borderline, as I say, superhuman or superhero kind of ability to snuff out and sense and smell foods. So if you're day 6 or day 8 or day 10 and you light a fire off and you had some food and your smoke would be a draw because people are, well, they're not going to burn. It's the middle of the daytime. They're not burning wood to stay warm. And then you're cooking some meat or some sort of, something, the smell is going to come out of the pot you're cooking on. People are going to smell that and they're going to come. But if you're able to do it easily and discreetly and covertly, get the cooking done fast, boil some water at the same time, and that the fire, you can put it out in just a second when you're finished with it. Put the lid and the cap back on where the fire hole is. Trying to put out versus putting out wood in your yard. What if you don't even have the water to like put out that in an instant fashion? There's a couple pieces that are very much lacking in a lot of people's preps. Being able to purify water and being able to get rid of your waste. Everybody's got the storable foods. I get it. But clean, reliable drinking water source and also being able to dispose of waste. Because once you get giardia or once you get dysentery, or once you get some fecal-borne matter in your intestines or in your stomach, parasites, whatever it is, and you don't have access to what we consider, Western medicine, for a better term. If you don't have access to a hospital, you don't have access to go into a doctor and get a prescription, and because those prescriptions are mainly, all those base chemicals are all controlled by China for almost all of our antibiotics and different type of antiparasitics, fenbenzidol being one of those. That's for dogs, that sort of thing, cattle, horses. Almost all those base ingredients are created in China. Now, if there was a problem with China or our money hyperinflating, where China doesn't want to take our dollars anymore, our treasury bonds for clearance at the port for ships that they could convert into gold, if they don't want that any longer, then a lot of those, what you consider quick fixes, if I get some sort of parasite and I'm up camping and I come back and I'm sick and I'm, diarrhea everywhere and I'm dehydrated and throwing up, I can go to the emergency room. 12 hours later, I already have a prescription. I'm laying back in my bed. I've nibbled down a few whatever pills to get rid of whatever, worm parasite is inside me, and I'm good to go in a few days after I recover and get the fluids back in me. That's not happening in these types of situations, where even if we come into a communist-based system where they're controlling food, on price controls on food and distribution and ration cards, what do you think is going to be available for medicines for you? I would highly encourage everybody to do a deep dive study into how Cuba, and when Cuba got cut off, average person lost 25 pounds down there. I realized they still had all those countries around them that were operational. Nobody was in dire straits except them. But the world we are entering, there's going to be a lot of countries simultaneously in the same position of being cut off from the world's raw materials. It doesn't matter if it's like Ransom was talking about, a rare earth mineral, or if it's the base ingredients or the base constituents to create your quote unquote medicines. It's the exact same thing. That would become a rare earth mineral in itself, penicillin. Any of these types of things that you are able to keep your body healthy with, there are going to be a lot of people just getting sick and passing on from simple waterborne stuff that just cleanly washing your hands, or there's things that aren't even in the United States, barely, are just going to run rampant without a little bit of knowledge on how to control your waste and how to be able to at least boil water to purify it. Without those two things, you're just a sitting duck. Not to ramble and, sit on some kind of high pedestal here, but I've learned from a lot of mistakes myself. I'm just trying to impart knowledge of things so you don't have to make the same mistakes. You can just fast forward and jump right in front of the queue of put this on your bucket list. You're going to have a way to boil water to purify it. You're going to have a way to get rid of your waste, whether that's trash bags that you tie up, put in, and then you somehow sanitize your hands when you're finished, or you do some sort of 5-gallon bucket with a bunch of, sawdust in a trash bag in that, whatever it is. There's going to be a curve for everybody. But where we're moving into, again, if Uganda is one and Rwanda are some of your best choices to escape this because they're not in the Great Reset, and Africa's coming up as the up and coming continent, and your next best choice to avoid all this chaos is to go to Uganda, oh my gosh, we've actually jumped the shark, not just once, but we're setting world records jumping over sharks on this. Canada's in a worse position than America. Australia's in a far worse position than America because the economies are much smaller and they're just getting ripped to shreds. America's ripping as we speak. But New Zealand, Australia, and Canada are absolutely just near the end of the shredder already. They're borderline at the edge of needing to call army out to contain and maintain any sort of a semblance of, normalcy in terms of security. The banks are just, you should really, if you have a chance and a spare few minutes, take a look at what's happening in these other countries that are not widely talked about. They don't want it all on the news. They don't want you to know what's going on there because it's coming to a neighborhood near you. Now, you're not even going to know what's happened until it happened to you. Because the way our media works is they're obscuring some of this information that's occurring right in your next door neighbor. That border across in the north there, that big country called Canada, the financial, the economic issues and woes up there just dwarf ours. Like, they don't want you to know it's right next door, because if you see that and you understand the policies that created that are the same policies they're implementing here, but they're going to go a 10x Uber on that when the next, a few months here after this paper casting thing that we do in November. Damn, the world's been for a very, very rude awakening here. And I'm going to say it's all based on electromagnetic and magnetic field changes on the planet that's making or allowing or creating the conditions for all of this to spill over. There's one of two things going on here. There's A or B. I can't see a C or a D choice. Very black and white. This one, it's going to be A or it's going to be B. A, electromagnetic field changes and magnetic field across our planet changing. The perception of humanity is going to break through, and we're going to see the evil for what it is. So they're absolutely going to burn this place down to control the ashes so they don't get taken out of power. B, there's no way to salvage the civilization that we're at. So whoever is in control over these, seeing the same thing over multi-thousand-year cycles, grab as much as you can into the lifeboats on the Titanic. We'll get to shore immediately sometime in the future, and we'll restart it again. Whoever's out on the front of the windshield here on the top of the planet, good luck. Some of you are going to survive, some not. Nothing we can do about it, and we're not going to tell you because that's going to cause more chaos in advance. But good luck. Anyway, Ransom, I don't know what you think. A or B? Or C. Ransom took off already. Well, we're heading to the end of the second hour here, Civilization Cycle. I appreciate your time. And think about some of these problems to talk about, not to scare you, but to frame it so you understand there's a larger than normal problem, a set of circumstances not seen in hundreds, if not thousands of years. And then what are some of the solutions to implement to make sure that you do survive through this? Because I will absolutely guarantee you that this, what is considered, all-encompassing resistance is futile, is strictly gaslighting. They want the world to appear that they have this superior advantage that, again, there's nothing you can do. But that is absolutely 180-degree opposite. It is like the Wizard of Oz, some tiny midget up there fidgeting with curtains and rods and some smoke, when in reality, there's an enormous amount things we can do, and nothing's written in stone. It is time to take our planet back. It is time for us to see what it is in front of us and stop being afraid of labeling it for what it is. How deep each point is, send that off to you in an email on a weekly. It's just a nice one-pager, nothing fancy. But civilizationcycle.com, put your email in there. We'll get you the list every single week. Appreciate you listening tonight. Thank you so much for your time. All of us together are going to be required to, as I say, take our planet back. Bye for now.